Good evening, everyone. I'd like to call to order this session of the Tacoma Park City Council. Will the clerk please call the roll?
Mayor Stewart.
Here.
Councilmember Kovar.
Here.
Councilmember Dubala. Here. Councilmember Smith.
Here.
Councilmember Siemens.
Present.
Excuse me. Councilmember Searcy.
Here.
Councilmember Costick.
She's here.
She's here.
I don't think you called the mayor, though.
What?
Did you call me?
I called you first.
Oh, did I? Oh,
Are
I'm
you-
here. Am I? All right, welcome, everyone. Sorry, some of us are eating our dinner from the dais this evening because we just had a meeting prior to this one with our Committee on the Environment. It's our yearly Green Team meeting, and so it had been rescheduled from a meeting that got snowed out a few weeks ago. All right, so now we're ready to start our council meeting tonight. The agenda for this evening, there are no changes. Moving forward over the next couple of weeks, tomorrow night we have our city council retreat. We will be meeting in the hydrangea room starting at 6:30, correct? Tomorrow is 6:30? Yes. Correct. That is our council retreat. It is open to the public to come and listen. There will be no public comment at that meeting. Then on Tuesday, January 29th, we have our second council retreat meeting, again in the hydrangea room at 6:30. We come back here on Wednesday, January 30th for our regular meeting that will start at 7:30. Our voting session on the 30th will be a resolution adopting the 2018 Emergency Operations Plan, a resolution adopting a definition of commercial property, and a resolution adopting council procedures. Our work session that evening will be the presentation of the quarterly financial reports for the first and second quarter of FY 2019. Then our next meeting will be on Wednesday, February 6th. We'll have a presentation by Chuck Bean, who's the Executive Director of the Metropolitan Washington Council of Governments, as we call it here, usually COG. Will come and present what COG does. Many of us, I think all of us, serve on many different committees. Not me. Oh, not you. Okay. You got MML covered for all of us. And so Mr. Bean will come and talk about the benefits to the city about working with COG. And our our voting session is the first reading ordinance approving FY 2019 budget amendment number 2. All right. So that are our upcoming agenda items, and you can always check the city website for more. We do have minutes this evening, correct? Or are we still? Correct. And have the changes, Councilwoman Costick had a few changes that she would like to have seen in the December 5th minutes? Yes. So those have been made? Recirculate them. Okay. Great. So would someone like to move the adoption of the minutes? Councilmember Siemens, Councilmember Dubala, second. Any other discussion or changes?
Sorry, I didn't take a look at them yet. Can I just, I did take a look at them, but I didn't look at the updates to them. So I just wanted to see where was the change made?
I don't think the changes weren't circulated yet.
Oh, okay.
Not yet, so you could just wait.
You want me to table it and we'll come back to it?
Sure. Is that okay? Yeah.
All right, I need a motion to table. So I have a motion to table from Councilwoman Costick. Do I have a second? A second to that motion to table? Second. Councilwoman Searcy. Any discussion on that? All those in favor of tabling the adoption of the minutes for December 5th, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Okay.
Table them until the next.
Yeah. Until you can get the changes done and circulated. If it's next meeting, great. All right. Next, we will start off this evening with a presentation from Crossroads Community Food Network. So if you all want to come up to the podium.
Good evening, everyone. We would like to thank the Tacoma Park City Council today for taking the time to listen to Crossroads 2018 successful programming. My name is Morgan Wiggin, and I'm the Farmers Market Program Manager. My colleague and I, Ariel Rothman, the Healthy Eating Program Manager, would like to share some 2018 highlights and plans for the 2019 season. We appreciate the support that you all and other community members and city employees have provided us, and we would like to express our gratitude. I provided a couple of handouts to you all that gives an overview of the 2018 accomplishments as well as some of the past year statistics so you can see how that compares and how much we've grown. If you have any questions on those, you can let me know. So this year was a time of both transition and growth for Crossroads Farmers Market. I started as a market volunteer in March of last year and joined Crossroads as the new program market manager in July. The Crossroads Farmers Market season was 23 weeks this year. That's the longest market season in its history. And there were a total market sale, and the total market sales for 2018 increased by 23% from 2017. There was also an increase in SNAP recipients' attendance at the market, which contributed to the increase in SNAP sales. A total of 76 households participated in the multi-farm CSA, which is up 33% from 2017. And over 2,500 CSA shares were distributed throughout the community, including shares donated. More than 3,000 pounds of fresh produce were donated to the Tacoma Park Meals on Wheels to help provide better access to healthy meals for local residents. We also saw support within the Crossroads vendor community that really reflects the ethos of both the organization and the city of Tacoma Park. Partnerships were maintained between prepared food vendors and farmers when the vendors would source their fresh ingredients that they used to make their products directly from the market. And farmers enjoyed a pupusa or carne asada from the Hunt Lunch vendors in return. Perhaps one of the most exciting accomplishments for Crossroads this year was surpassing the $500,000 mark for Fresh Chex nutrition incentives distributed to the community. This was both through direct distribution at the market and through community partners like Centronia and Cheer. In the past 11 years, we have given out $510,368 in Fresh Chex nutrition incentives to increase families' access to healthy, culturally appropriate, local grown and produced foods. And the lengthened market season coupled with increased outreach and community engagement has really helped to grow these market sales. Our Community Ambassadors program, made up of 8 well-connected residents in and around Tacoma Park, doing strategic outreach within the community, reached over 1,600 individuals that did not know about the market prior to the outreach. Currently, we are planning for the fast-approaching 2019 market season. Our season will run 33 weeks, just like this past year, and we are further revamping our outreach and marketing efforts to increase market attendance, including launching a formalized market tour program for low-income community members. Although tours are available for anyone interested, just let me know and I can definitely set one up. We will also be piloting a frequent shopper card for our market goers that dare to venture out to the market during the colder months to help to grow attendance during the slow times. In 2019, we're hoping to bring more community health-focused programming to the market to create a space that's centered on well-being and opportunity to combat barriers that people, specifically immigrants and people of color, face in this current political climate. And we will also be growing our community ambassador programming by adding some youth ambassadors who live in the Tacoma Park area and have visited the market growing up. And overall, we had a great year last year in spite of some challenges, and we're looking forward to the 2019 market season. We'll be open on Wednesday, April 17th, and we'll be on Ann Street in Tacoma Park every Wednesday thereafter from 11 a.m. to 3 p.m. through November 27th. Please feel free to come to the market for a tour, and I look forward to continued collaboration between Crossroads and the Tacoma Park City Council. As a Ward 1 Tacoma Park resident, I am honored to be part of an organization that is such an important community partner and resource in the community, and we look forward to working with the city on future projects. Now Ariel will share a little bit about Crossroads Healthy Eating Program and the Microenterprise Training Program.
So in addition to the highlights that Morgan mentioned, I also wanted to mention that in 2018, we educated over 1,000 community members about nutrition, healthy food preparation, and environmental science in classrooms, in different community partners, including community partner sites, including various apartment buildings such as Essex House, and also community bridges and the market, of course. I was also hired as the new healthy eating educator in last January 2018 in order to further expand the healthy eating program, and then was tasked with being the full program manager in July to further expand the program, which we hope to continue to do in 2019. As far as the microenterprise training program is concerned, we admitted 5 new food businesses to the kitchen, and more to come later in 2019 as we continue to have more microenterprise training programs. And we now have a total of 12 kitchen users. We had a couple different MTP programs this past year, and from those, we had 36 people graduate and helped 31 participants get their Serve Safe certification. In addition, we continue to advocate for the appropriations of the new Maryland Farm and Families Act that we helped get passed last year. And we held a full day roundtable discussion with community stakeholders centered on our $1 million idea, which is known as the Crossroads Cafe, which is part year-round indoor produce and prepared food market, and part testing ground for local food entrepreneurs. And then, as Morgan mentioned, the support from the city is vital and has a big impact on Tacoma Park residents who most need it in order to support a livable community for all. So once again, thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Ariel and Morgan. Oh, don't go so fast. It's not that bad. I just want to double check to see if any of my colleagues have any questions or anything. Councilmember Smith?
Thank you for the presentation. It's exciting to see a program that when it initially started, maybe the first couple of years that I was on the council, and it's grown and it's really taken off. So I want to thank you guys for all of the work that you're doing to make this a valuable asset in our community. One thing that I saw is the senior participants has dropped. Do you guys know why that's happened?
Yes.
Let me just, okay, before you answer that, let me thank you for everything you've done with Essex House, because that's in my ward, and for Lunch and Learn. I understand that you guys have done some training with the kids that participate in that program, and I'm one of the founders of it, so I really appreciate it. And then once you answer the question, I want to talk more about the $1 million idea. All right, go ahead.
So to answer your question about the reduction in senior participants, Crossroads, I'm not sure the year that it stopped. I think it was 3 years ago. They used to have something where you could go to the market with your ID showing that you were a senior and just immediately receive the Fresh Check double dollar incentives. That program kind of got out of hand. A lot of people were coming way before the market opened. There was a huge line. It just wasn't sustainable. And we didn't also have a way to organize it because people would just show their IDs rather than using a benefit that they already received and us being able to track that and match it. So they ended up stopping this program where you could just show your ID of your age and then receiving the double dollars. You can still come to the market with the senior checks that get distributed in the summer at the senior centers and still get that doubled. We just don't do, that's the big reduction in numbers, is a lot less seniors were coming just showing their ID and getting the fresh checks.
Okay. And so with the $1 million idea, you guys are trying to, if I understand this correctly, have an indoor market, right?
Yes, and it would be year-round.
And it would be year-round. Have you guys reached out to Washington Adventist Hospital, because they're supposedly leaving this year, and they already have a full kitchen restaurant in the lower level of the building? So, I mean, there's uses, somebody's gonna have to use it, or it's just gonna sit there. There is a door that you can access it from this parking lot behind the hospital, and there's, there is parking. So, I was thinking about this, maybe something like a Union Market type of concept.
Yeah.
But have it the, farmers to market, people that are already participating in the program, and they could, sell their goods or, turn it into pupusas or whatever it is. But you have a kitchen on site and you already have seating for people. So it's like a restaurant kitchen type idea.
Yeah, that's a really good idea. I'm not sure I think we're in the middle of doing a feasibility study, so I'm not sure what point in the process we're at, but that's definitely something to take note of, so thank you.
So if you guys want an introduction to the president of the hospital, just let me know.
Oh,
Yeah, we
thank
will.
you.
Thank
Thank
you
you.
so much.
Councilwoman Searcy?
Thank you. I just want to say thank you so much. Truly appreciate your presence in Ward 6. The farmers markets have been great. I'm glad to see the increase all around. That's been really, really, I'm very happy to see that we're getting the necessary increases. So my question for you all is, what more could we do? My colleague mentioned the $1 million idea. I am fighting to find a Ward 6 location for something like that. I'm like, I want you right where you are right now. But what else could, the city do to help support you? Because you're doing such wonderful work. Is it getting the word out more? Is it really, what could we do to better support the efforts that you all have underway?
Yeah.
Do you want to go first?
Sure. So the first thing that comes to my mind is we're really, like I mentioned, trying to revamp our outreach and promotional efforts and marketing for the market because obviously the more residents and community members we can reach, the better our impact, and also the more sustainable that the market can be over the long term. So any ideas that you might have for us, like either having signage somewhere, banners, if I can go to some type of community meeting and talk, if you see that there's a lot of people that don't know about the market, I can definitely do that. Really anything about getting the word out and doing outreach is our priority right now.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Councilman Costa?
Thank you. I just want to echo the thanks that my colleagues shared. And one of the thoughts, building on what you had just commented on regarding outreach, is that last year we had some ward days where people from a specific ward were invited, and then the council member from that ward came. And I think people really enjoyed that, and it was a great way to kind of encourage people to go if maybe they hadn't gone before, and get people over there if they don't live close to it. So I hope you'll do that again, and
Yeah,
would love to
definitely. I'm
participate in it. Great, thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
Councilman DeBala?
Yeah, it's wonderful what you're doing, and I just have one thing to say, which is I have already signed up again for my CSA, and I would like you
Thank
to
you.
repeat how people can do that if they would like to.
Yeah, definitely. I actually had a little blurb in like the speech and skipped over it because I thought I was taking too long. But so, and yeah, so
Yeah,
it's,
people want to help the market, this is a way to do
yeah,
it.
definitely. So currently our signups for the CSA program are open. If you or anyone you know is interested in signing up to purchase a subscription of a weekly box of fresh, healthy produce that both supports local farmers, the local food system, as well as an organization that's committed to a more equitable food system and community, then please send them our way. You can go on our website, which is crossroadscommunityfoodnetwork.org, and there is a page for the CSA and a link to sign up. And you can also just reach out to anyone at Crossroads, and we can help direct anyone who wants to sign up. But yeah, signups are open.
Thank you. Councilman McCovar?
Yes, thanks for the presentation. I just want to mention, following up on the earlier comment, that the ward days were really great. I think on Ward 1 day we had 8 or 10 people go over. And of course we have a great farmers market in Ward 1, but the two can obviously coexist really well. And I just want to remind people, I mentioned this last year, there was a study that showed that if people from one part of a city, which maybe on average is better off financially, shop 5% of their time in the other part of the city over a relatively short period of time, the economy really gets boosted. So
Yeah.
I'm committing myself and trying to shop more over in that part of the city, and I urge people who might be watching, you don't have to go every day, but try to go a couple times a month, and going there, if you can make it on Wednesday between 11 and 3 is a great way of starting that, so thanks.
Thank you.
Councilmember Siemens?
Thank you. Again, thank you for the presentation. Welcome to the market. And anytime that you would like, we can arrange for you to visit the Franklin Apartments, which we distribute food there and have a kind of a captive audience of about 75 people on first 2 Mondays of each month. Turns out, because we got snowed out on the second Monday this month, we're going to be meeting with them tomorrow, but I know that's a little short notice to you. But anyways, then you could advertise the CSA and also the market.
Yeah,
And then also if you have a flyer that you want to email me, I could print that out and also have that distributed.
yeah. I could drop off some. We have a lot of flyers too that we have printed out, so I could drop off some if you
Okay,
want to
that'd be
distribute
great.
them.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Great. Well, Morgan and Ariel, thank you so much. I love coming to the markets, and I hope this year you'll continue the tradition of the corn eating. Or maybe something else this year we can think of. But thank you so much. And I think the night market with the CDA this year was a lot of fun as well. Getting us all out and enjoying the wonderful food and music and having a terrific time together. So thank you for all the work that you put into it. And I think you can tell from the enthusiasm here, you just need to call upon us and let us know what we need to do to help support you in your work. So thank you for coming this evening.
Thank you for
Thank
having
you.
us.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Terrific. Now we'll move on to, we do not have any voting items this evening, so we'll just move on to general public comments. Any public comments tonight? Okay, Mr. Lovelace, we will get you the microphone.
Hello. Hello, this is Mr. Pat Lovelace, your official peace delegate. I want to tell you that we had a wonderful time on the Martin Luther King parade down in Anacostia. It was cold, all right, wind chills far below zero, and we still stuck it out. Although I hear a few people said that they froze off their keisters. You know, if you see any keisters down there, you turn them in. But anyway, I had a great time down there. The parade was wonderful. I was up for it, and I felt really good. The cold didn't bother me at all. And I keep telling people, if Martin Luther King didn't let the cold hold him back, well, I ain't going to do the same thing either. I ain't going to let the cold hold me back neither. And another thing, too, is I heard that 3 homeless people died this year in the last couple of days. And I'd like to see what we can do to get hygiene stations set up in Tacoma Park where the homeless people can step in out of this kind of weather, where they can get a free shower and a bath, get their clothes washed, their teeth brushed, their faces shaved. I'd like to see that. They're human beings too, and they shouldn't be left out there like animals to die. Even animals can't survive some of that cold weather. So anyway, people bring in their pets. Why can't they bring in a homeless person if they see them out there suffering? Let's set up some homeless hygiene stations and a sober center especially when this Washington Adventist Center hospital closes. You know, when we do another thing, one thing I'd like to see done with that campus is a sober center and a hygiene center for the homeless, because those people's lives are too valuable. Another thing, too, is we had several people shot over this weekend, and today there was 5 shot in a bank in the area. I was just coming on the news. I'd like to give every one of them my condolences and see what we can do as Tacoma Park to step away from guns. Let's not have guns. We don't need them. They're too easy to grab in a heated argument. There's no reason to have them in the house. I don't have a gun. And I never had a gun. I work for peace. I stand for peace. I've carried a giant wooden peace sign around the country. I've carried it from Maine to Washington. It's by way of New York, Cape Cod. But I've never had to carry a gun. Never. Ku Klux Klan got me even, and I got badly sick the way I am now. It's what caused this all. But I never needed to use a gun. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Lovelace.
Come on, the next one. Come on up and speak.
All right. Any
Love
other
it,
public
love it,
comments
love it.
this evening?
Thank you. Hi, everybody. Thanks for coming. You all know me, Mary Jane Mitsui, Ward 2. I'd like to say a little thing. I'm sorry, I forgot to bring in the phone number to call when you find a homeless person out in the cold. Somebody I tried to help last year, she refused help. I tried to help her. I called the homeless number, which I used to have. Unfortunately, I gave it to another homeless person, and I lost it. I need to get it again. And I wish you would disseminate it to everybody. Everybody should have that in their wallet, this number. This lady died, I understand. I heard it from another homeless person I was trying to help that was outside the Giant begging for food. And these are people, the woman who died was an elderly African-American woman. The one woman, the man who told me about her death was a young white Caucasian. So these people come in all colors and all ages. And it's really sad to see it. And I'm sorry I lost the number. I give it to you. But you please disseminate it. Everybody should have it in their wallet. And part of the thing is, and this makes me depressed, really, some mental illness, sometimes you can't cure it, okay? And this woman I tried to help, she refused my help. And when I called them to follow up on her, the police told me they did it. They asked her if they could take her someplace. She refused. They said the law prevents them from making these people come out of the cold. They're committing suicide, and it's legally they're right, which really, I mean, I feel so, I wish I could do something, you know. But, you know, it's their legal right to refuse help. So if you start to feel guilty about it, think of that also, that sometimes there is something you can't do. At least not presently. I don't know what to do, you know. So anyways, and please help people with parents with special needs, adults, who I started 3 years ago. And I'd like a shout out for the farmers market on Sundays, because there is a very nice African-American farmers that come there from I grew up in St. Mary's County, Maryland. They come there every Sunday. And there's also an Hispanic man, comes all the way from Frederick, who bakes the best bread, and he used to sell the best tamales, but they were told, he was ordered not to sell food now, ready-made food like that, because of the restaurants that are there now. So they can't compete with Wednesday things because they can fix their food in front of everybody. Now they can't do it, they were told, because of the restaurants. Thank you.
Great. Any other public comments this evening? Okay, moving on then to council comments. Councilmember Siemens.
Thank you, Mayor. I would just encourage people to call the police if they do see a homeless person, especially on these very cold nights. The police do go out and check on their welfare and make sure that they are okay. And the police do have the flexibility of using their own discretion if they feel that the weather is so bad and that the individual does not have adequate protection from the weather. So again, I would encourage you to call the Tacoma Park Police and let them know if there's someone you feel is in jeopardy. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilmember Smith?
I just want to thank Grace Wiggins of the Housing and Community Development Department for all of her hard work, dedication to the residents of Essex House, who have not, some of these residents have not had hot water for a very long time, and she has gone above and beyond to make sure that this right that these residents should have is rectified. So thank you, Grace. I really appreciate it. You didn't have to do all the things that you've done. I want to thank Ms. Ludlow for her hiring Ms. Wiggins, because she is unbelievable. Thank you.
Councilmember DeBala.
Yeah, two regional things and one local thing. Speaking of COG, the Bay Committee met last week. This year, the Bay Committee is going to be concentrating more on climate change. We were talking about this during the Green Team meeting a few minutes ago. And for people who are interested in the Potomac River report. It's a report on the health of the Potomac River over the last 1985 to now, what is that, 25 years. Email me and I'll send you a copy of the summary. The Energy and Environment Committee also met today, and there are 3 things they're going to be focusing on. One is a tree canopy committee jointly with a couple of the other COG committees. So I'm thinking Tacoma Park might have somebody on that. They'll be looking at transportation and electrification and at solar. That'd be the 3 things they're focusing on this year. And we heard a bit about the DC clean energy legislation. If anyone's interested in that, get in touch with me and I'll send you the presentation. And the local thing is that we talked in December about a state bill on the widening of, to prohibit widening of Route 410. And if anyone is interested, I have arranged an informal morning session in a neighbor's house on Ethan Allen. Anybody on Ethan Allen wants to come by, again, email me and I'll get you the address and an invitation. That's it. Thank you.
Councilman Costick.
Thank you. And building on Councilmember Dabala's last announcement, I also want to thank her for inviting Ward 3 residents as well, whose backyards are along Ethan Allen. Just a couple of quick things. Washington Gas has been doing some work along Carroll Avenue for residents who have had issues with water seeping into their gas lines and not having enough gas over the past, low gas levels over the past couple of days in this cold weather. So hopefully that should be resolved soon. They seem to be moving along, but I have seen them out along there. And then the other thing is, on Sunday, I will be on the radio show Talk of Tacoma, talking a little bit about Ward 3. So hope you will join me at 2 o'clock. Thanks.
Great. Councilwoman Searcy.
So I want to give a couple of kudos. One is for Daryl. There was a rogue utility vehicle that it was parked on Wildwood Drive for heaven knows how long. And within one email, it was gone. So it's gone. Everyone's happy. All is right in the world. That rogue, what we assume is a Washington Gas truck, was gone. It's gone. So I want to thank her for that. And also want to reiterate residents' appreciation of Chief Duvall. One of the residents in Ward 6 had her pride flag taken from her home, and not only did the chief respond to that request on his personal cell, but also residents band together, and now everyone's gonna have flags, and I need to get mine too. So it was just really, really nice, the level of responsiveness that staff are providing. It's just mind-blowing given the size of staff that we have. Also, just want to let my colleagues know that on Friday I will be, along with Daryl, meeting with various staff from Montgomery County Parks to talk about Hillwell Manor Park. We realize that everyone has been touched, but we just want to make sure that we're all on the same page. So I appreciate Montgomery County staff for showing up, and so there'll be staff from stormwater management as well as playground management. So for residents in Hillwood Manor, we're continuing to make progress on that. Thank you.
Great. I just have a couple of announcements. One is on this Friday and Saturday, I will be at the Mayor's Innovation Project Conference in DC, and actually giving a presentation on our LED streetlight conversion. And I want to thank Donna, our new media specialist, for helping me put together that presentation. On Friday, one of our local residents is doing 1,000 Fridas across the world, actually. And so if you have time, I think they're already popping up in stores in downtown and Old Town. But take a look around. There will be pictures, representations of Frida Kahlo in random places, I think, all day Friday. And also, I just want to say thank you again to Donna, actually, for putting up a page on our city website regarding resources for federal workers and contractors who are being impacted by the shutdown. And I know the city manager is going to talk about this, but she's been gathering information from various places, and so that lives on the city website now. So thank you for that. And I just want to echo my colleagues' thanks to our city staff for all they do. And I think especially in the wintertime when it's really dark and cold and there are many issues that come up, they put in many, many hours and are very responsive. So thank you. Great. City manager? I'm sorry. Oh, I didn't see your light. I'm
Yeah,
sorry.
I just forgot to mention something. One, I'm the chair of the MML's Conference Planning Committee. We have locked in the convention this summer. We have 2 keynotes once again. These individuals have never attended the Ocean City Conference, so I think people are going to be blown away. The other thing is we're going to try to have some major sponsors like Facebook, Amazon attend the conference. This will be a first for them also. And some of the micro-mobility companies give attendees a chance to use a scooter. Well,
It is.
exactly. So I hope everyone will attend this year. You will be seeing social media blasts coming out from the league, but this is going to be, I think, a really, really very interesting. I don't know it's going to be the best. I can't say that yet. But we are really trying to blow it out this year. And one other thing I wanted to mention, this weekend I will be at MML's board retreat at the city of Rockville. Mayor Bridget Newton, who's also the president of the league this year, and the mayor of Rockville will be hosting us. Thank you.
Great. And city manager?
Thank you. As the mayor mentioned, we do have information for those affected by the federal government shutdown. One of the things that I think has been clear, people have been emailing me all kinds of links to, this entity has programs and things. And so anyone who is affected, whether you're a federal government employee or contractor or affected by the downturn in your business because of the shutdown, I urge you, anytime you're looking to any kind of bank or rental issue or utility issue or government issue, ask. So even if it's not listed on one of these lists, there are a number of entities who are willing to help people when they're in a difficult situation. I did include in my city manager comments just a description of our ongoing emergency assistance program, which provides financial support to income-eligible residents in crisis. And so I provide information on how residents can get funds for kind of emergency issues such as housing, utilities, prescription drugs, and food costs that you can't meet in a particular month, particularly if you're looking to avoid eviction or disconnection of utilities. Although most of the utilities are foregoing disconnection during this time, we do have assistance for those folks. The program is administered by Ministries United Silver Spring Tacoma Park, and you contact that group directly. So I have the information, it's on the website. It'll be in my city manager comments on the website. We may find other ways to help. We certainly are having, we've reached out to those who have children in our before and after care programs. So whether or not they are government employees, Tacoma Park residents or whatever, if they're in one of these programs, we're going to be working with them. And if there are other programs or issues that relate to the city of Tacoma Park, please let us know, and we'll see if there's some way to help. We recognize that it's been a month. It's getting really hard for people. And a different item related to money, our community grants program, it's time for the next round. We've been working on getting the information out in a better way, and the application process to make it easier. So we need to have letters of interest from people who are interested in this program. We provide up to $10,000 in matching grant funds to area nonprofits and business associations. These are for projects and events designed to provide Tacoma Park residents with greater access and opportunities for participation in the arts and sciences. And things that have happened in the past, to give people an idea, are science and math clubs, robotics clubs, computer programming classes, concert and film series, public art, maker spaces, technology-based internship and apprenticeship programs. Letters of interest must be submitted online by February 28th. So there's information on the website on it, and like I said, we're really improving, I think, the process for people, and we encourage people to apply.
Question? In the budget process last year, we talked about whether to ask the committee to look at focusing it a little more because it's such a limited amount of money. Did that happen?
We passed along all that information, yes. I can't speak to all the details on that off the top of my head, I'm sorry. But no, we recognize that it's a smaller pot of money, and so we've been very focused on how to proceed with that. Okay. Wanted to just note that on the issue of small cell antennas, the city code language is posted pertaining to permits in the city's rights-of-way. We are shifting to the task of drafting administrative regulations. We do need, and we'll be getting outside subject matter help to draft those regulations. It is even more complex than I imagined it was, so we'll be working on that. At the same time, the county's Tower Commission is receiving multiple applications. Almost all of them are in state highways, and so we are trying to determine how the state highway is reviewing these. Very few are actually within the city's rights-of-way. And we still are seeing Montgomery County applications for Prince George's County property. So in any event, it's a work in progress. I am supposed to be receiving a letter inviting a person to be from Tacoma Park on the Tower Commission. So I'm hoping that comes through as well. We continue to pursue that. We did resend some letters regarding this, our small cell code language to the county council members and the county executive. Sounds like there's been some difficulty in actually getting that information online to them in the past, and so we're making sure they get it. Okay.
Sent a letter to
To
our
the- to
delegation
delegation,
and
yes.
State Highway. Yeah.
That's right, we're following up State Highway. And Friday, instead of being at the Hillward Brandon thing, the deputy city manager and I are going to be joining a number of our police officers at the Polar Bear Plunge, so we'll see. It's a good fundraiser
Can one
for
do that
Special
with a
Olympics.
cast on their arm?
I'm sorry?
Can one do that with a cast on their arm?
Yes, I have plastic bags for it. It's gonna look lovely.
Whoever on City TV gets a picture of just the cast out of gets
Yes,
a prize.
I will try to do it nicely.
Great. All right, so now we'll move on to our work session. We have two this evening. The first is an update and review of council priorities, and the second is a review of council procedures. I think the best way to proceed is I'm going to turn it over to the deputy city manager and perhaps ask him just to go through his whole presentation, and then council can come back at different points. but I'm afraid if we stop you, we might.
However you wish to do it is
Yeah.
fine by me.
Well, let's do it that way.
Okay, and I can go through it relatively quickly. Really, the purpose of tonight's presentation is to serve as a primer for the retreat that begins tomorrow. The emphasis of both retreat meetings, as I understand it, is going to be on racial equity and how council can think strategically about ensuring that decisions are made using the racial equity lens that you all have been discussing for a couple of years now. Those meetings will be facilitated by some experts in the area of racial equity, and I've provided them with this overview as well in order to help them familiarize themselves with your priorities, as well as some of the progress that's been made. The presentation will go through each of the thematic areas, as well as goals and progress made at a high level towards those goals. It doesn't get into necessarily individual programs and, say, a division in the rec department, but it speaks to some of the progress that we've been making. So at the mayor's behest, I will go through it, and we can come back to any of the slides that you wish to discuss or want to talk more about. So this is a list of the 5 thematic areas: a livable community for all, fiscally sustainable government, environmentally sustainable government, engaged, responsive, service-oriented government, and community development for an improved and equitable quality of life. The first 4 were similar to the thematic areas of the previous council, and then the new council, the current council, decided to change the title of the last one to make it more reflective of what your aim was with that priority area. So first, a livable community for all. Some of the major projects associated with this theme are advocacy for city residents. And so far as we're talking about school site selection and a Piney Branch facility study, council has long been interested in a feasibility study for Piney Branch Elementary School in particular, to see what else could possibly go on that site. And there's been a lot of advocacy around the pool that's there, and if something were to happen to that, where else a pool or aquatic center might be located within the city. Sidewalks, we're always making progress on retrofitting existing sidewalks to meet ADA requirements, and working on sidewalk design and improvements. There's a policy area that we'll be talking about a little bit later that council's expressed an interest in as one of the priority areas as well. Public land and open space management plan, public transit, bike, pedestrian, and safety projects, including safe routes to school, and the implementation of recommendations included in the fiscal year 16 cultural plan, which we hope to be really getting our hands around and starting in earnest soon. So the first goal under a livable community for all is to identify programming needs in the community and develop approaches to meet those needs, particularly with an emphasis on youth, families, seniors, and other more vulnerable residents. Achievement of this goal, I think, as long as the city exists, is going to be ongoing. We're going to be tailoring our services and programs to the needs of the residents. So I think that's something that's important to note. Many of the things we talk about, you can't just put a check mark next to. A lot of them we're making progress on, but they're ongoing. Among other things, some not abstract things that we have done are restructuring the recreation department to emphasize youth success, and we've continued to develop and cultivate partnerships with local organizations who offer assistance to our residents. We will be getting the results of the resident survey back in about mid-February. That'll be coming, a presentation is scheduled to be before you on March 6th, actually. We've been hopeful to use the results of that survey to help us have further discussions with you about where we see gaps have been identified and where we can create new programs or shift the emphasis of existing programs in order to close those gaps. Another goal under this theme is ensuring that we have a range of safe, quality, and stable housing options that are affordable for all of our residents. The council has had a series of work sessions to consider the Housing and Economic Development Strategic Plan. You had one last week, and more discussions and decision points are going to be coming before you soon so that we can begin development of the implementation plan. We have a new community development manager over housing in HCD, the very same one Councilmember Smith was singing the praises of earlier. And she, as he noted, she's doing a great job so far in her work to improve communication among landlords, tenants in the city, and to build on existing outreach and education efforts. She's really taken it to the next level. We still need to develop and implement a plan of action for how to utilize the Housing Reserve Fund. I imagine that'll be something that you'll discuss in your retreats, and we certainly plan to tee up some discussion for you during the budget work sessions about how we use those funds, what we include in the fiscal year 20 budget. That's new funds for the Housing Reserve. Another goal is defending the status as our status as a sanctuary city and continue to be welcoming and inclusive. We remain a strong sanctuary city and continue our communication and advocacy efforts. The latest example is after the president's Oval Office speech, the mayor put out a statement that was very well received by our residents and widely shared on social media. Because immigrant populations are underrepresented often, harkening back to the resident survey, we actually hired a firm to conduct focus groups of immigrants from African and Latin American countries as part of the survey process to help provide some anecdotal information, or I should say supplemental information to the survey results. And we've got a preliminary report there, and the findings are very interesting, and they'll be included as part of the presentation on March 6th. Since I said they're very interesting, I should also say that what we've heard, and this is a very summarized version of it, is that the people who participated in those focus groups, they noted some of the concerns that they have in the community, but overall there was very overwhelming happiness about living in Tacoma Park. They felt that it was an inclusive community, and they enjoyed, for the most part, being residents in Tacoma Park. Another goal is to further our efforts related to racial equity. We continue to participate in a number of organizations. The mayor actually serves as the chair now, is it? Of the one of the COG committees on racial equity. We have the What's My Bias training underway, and that's a training that is being offered to some of the council boards and committee members related to implicit bias and racial equity. And as I mentioned earlier, the retreat meetings this year are going to have a focus on racial equity. They're going to be facilitated by experts in the area, and we hope to take from the retreat and the discussions that council have that information to develop next steps that the city can take to further our efforts. Moving on to the next theme area, fiscally sustainable government. Major projects here are modifying the budget document in accordance with GFOA, that's the Government Finance Officers Association Standards of Excellence in communicating about the budget process and determining how to address personal property tax issues for businesses. Two things that you're very familiar with because of recent discussions, and especially because of recent discussions you've had. The first goal in this area is increasing funding from the county and state to address tax duplication and other city needs. We're continuing discussions that we've been having for many years now. With a new county executive and a new county staff, there could be new opportunities to make similar arguments that we have in the past. We hope to develop a strategy for tax duplication discussion, and actually we've already started to plant seeds with regards to those discussions. We are also going to be requesting additional bond bill funds to offset the cost of library renovation. 2 years ago, we got $150,000, and we hope to get at least that much in this year's session. We've already started working with our legislative advocate to get the ball rolling on that. Two other goals under this theme: adopt a financial policy to determine the appropriate level of designated reserves. You have done that, and it will be factored into the development of the fiscal year 20 recommended budget. Another goal is minimizing adverse impacts of changes to the federal tax system. The city continues to provide assistance and referrals to residents negatively impacted by changes with that system at the federal level, and now we're dealing with things that I don't think anybody foresaw a year ago when you all decided to make that a goal. And that'll make our upcoming budget discussions that much more interesting. Another goal is adopting sustainable investment in banking policy and practices. We have identified and begun working with a consultant to help us determine those tolerance levels. The consultant has come before you and made a presentation, and we're in the process of establishing a meeting with the consultant and the Nuclear Free Committee. As you consider amendments to the purchasing code, you've requested language regarding socially responsible purchasing to accompany existing language about the environment and nuclear-free purchasing considerations. We'll be probably having further discussions on that issue in February or March. And you'll soon be deciding how to define commercial property and discussing means of offsetting the about $320,000 in inventory tax that's been eliminated for fiscal year 20 and beyond. The next theme area is environmentally sustainable government. I won't read through all of the major projects here, especially coming out of the Green Team meeting where you talked about the many things that the city is doing and our many successes. It's very heartening to hear that we're at a point where we really need to start mandating things because we've done we've had so many successes with voluntary and incentive-based sustainability efforts. It is difficult to read, but the goal is to continue to be a leader in community programs and policy for energy and environmental sustainability. We are doing a lot, and we are being recognized for what we're doing. I put in all caps because I think the biggest thing in 2018 associated with your priorities is getting all of our street lights transitioned over to LED, which is humongous, and that work is underway. Another goal is to preserve and grow the tree canopy. We're in the process of doing education and outreach through newsletter articles and social media, gathering feedback and perspectives from residents through a tree ordinance survey, which I believe is live right now. It went live, I think, a week or two ago. That is designed to collect feedback from any residents, and it's particularly targeted to those who have had experience with tree issues or the tree ordinance itself. Council will likely be amending the tree ordinance and is committed to ensuring that changes do not adversely impact the city's tree canopy, because there can be some inverse relationships there. The next theme area is engage responsive service-oriented government. Some major projects here include implementing changes within the police department, consistent with a resolution that the council passed 2 summers ago now in July 17. Police department renovation. We are in the process actually of finalizing the concept design and hope to begin the renovations this fiscal year. They'll include expanding the dispatch office, which is very cramped, and utilizing some of the currently underutilized space in the bottom level of the community center, as well as filling in the atrium, which will do the same thing. It'll enable us to utilize some space which is at a premium in the community center, that is currently just air. It'll also cut down on some of the acoustics in the building. Those of us who work on the third floor often know right when school lets out, and hopefully shrinking the area where sound can bounce will help out there a little bit. I'm no noise scientist though, so it might make it worse. I'm not sure. Continue to serve as a liaison between utility companies and the community to improve communication and understanding of project impacts. You all know the work that you have done and staff has done in that area. We've got a number of internal projects. This year did a $150,000 project replacing our IT switches and next generation firewall. And without getting into all the details, it brought us 20 years past where we were technologically, and enhances our security internally as well. And planning for moving city elections to coincide with state and federal elections. A goal in this area is identifying policing priorities and exploring options for enhanced police-community relations. The chief, one of the first things he did when he started with the city was establish regular meetings with principals from area schools, and the mayor attends those meetings as well. He has, as Councilmember Searcy, I believe, mentioned earlier, made himself extraordinarily available to council members, to residents, to neighborhood groups, and other partner organizations. He's been, as we were looking for in a chief, someone who's been very out there and willing to meet with people. And I think that's having a really positive effect on the perceptions of the police department, helping. The police department's being in the process of being restructured with an emphasis on community policing, and there are ongoing discussions about mutual aid agreements with neighboring jurisdictions. Some of those are going better than others. The next goal is to improve communications with residents, especially two-way online and social media communication. We continue to create new project pages and include them in the directory as new projects come online, and our analytics show that they continue to be a vital resource of information. The city manager's created a new project chart that she's providing periodically. I think we're going to get a new one for the retreat tomorrow night. And as those are updated, we'll be providing them as part of the city manager comments. Council and staff blogs and social media continue to be utilized for important messaging. Our analytics show that they are, like, as I mentioned before, a vital source of information for people. We're increasingly using online surveys and forums to gather information and feedback from residents. Even applications for certain things we're using online forms for now. That used to be cumbersome paper-based. We're hopefully going to be moving towards a more electronic permitting system and payment system also. We're working out some issues there to try to make that a reality. Our newsletter sections posted online for translation. Those of you who have seen the newsletter over the last 4 months or so notice a large on the front page editor's note in 4 different languages indicating where there's an icon where you can go online and those articles have been posted, and you can use the translation feature on our website to translate the articles, and the accuracy, I've been told from Amharic speakers, French speakers, and Spanish speakers that the accuracy is very good. There's been marked improvement over the years, and in fact, to save some of our staff some time, when I was trying to translate some stuff, I used the tool and copied and pasted it into Word, and I sent it to an Amharic, a French, and a Spanish speaker, and I didn't have they all said this looks exactly how I would have written it. It didn't have a single edit. We are moving right now. We're doing that with the key 3, 4, 5 articles per newsletter, and we're going to be moving with the help of the new communications specialist towards posting all articles in the newsletter online so that they can be easily translated. New approaches will be used in fiscal year the fiscal year 20 budget to provide more clarity and detail. We've been speaking with individual council members about some of those changes, and we'll be implementing them into the new budget. That means our 200-page document might get a little bit bigger, but I think you'll be pleased with some of the relatively small changes that we'll be making, I think, and that will provide much more detail than the budget document has provided in the past. Some improvements have been made in the way utilities communicate information about their work in their city. I said some improvements. I didn't say it emphatically. But steps in the right direction have been made. And the resident survey is wrapping up. Another goal is improving policies and processes related to the tree ordinance, traffic calming, sidewalk requests, repair and maintenance, and residential commercial boundary conflicts. There's a strategy in place to address the tree ordinance policies and processes that 3 of our council members are working on. And we're currently gathering feedback through a public survey, which will be used to help inform some of the next steps. We are still needing to determine how and when to address the other policy and process items. Again, I think that's something that will be discussed at the retreat as we refocus on some of the priority areas that we just haven't been able to get to. Another goal is improving and formalizing systems for council-appointed committees and external committees on which council members serve, like the Metro Washington Council of Government. We have drafted a survey for current and past board and committee members to gather feedback on their experiences while serving, and also ideas for improvement, and I understand that should be going out relatively soon. And also compiled information about the requirements for participating on a committee and the objectives of the different committees to begin evaluating and putting together recommendations for committee structure. Let's see, and that's council focused. So the final theme area is community development for an improved and equitable quality of life. This only covers 2 slides, and yet it's a ton of work that's being done related to this goal. Most of the housing, the planning, and economic development efforts are kind of under the umbrella of this goal. And if your past conversations are any indication, I think we'll be spending a lot of time in fiscal year 20 in each of those areas. Just some major projects there: Tacoma Junction redevelopment, Purple Line preparation, trying to advocate for appropriate reuse of John Evans Andrews School, and the list goes on and on. Another big thing that we'll be talking more about and will likely occur in fiscal year 20 is relates to the Tacoma Park Recreation Center and what's going to happen with the ownership of that, and what the next steps will be in our efforts to redevelop it. Also, the hospital will be leaving later this year, and later this calendar year, which is fiscal year 20. And so we're going to be, I'm sure, ramping up our discussions about what happens on that site and advocating for uses that meet the needs of the community. And the library. We actually met with the architects today, and we'll be providing you all with information very soon on next steps there. We've got some interesting new options that are opportunities that have come out of the floodplain study, and we'll be briefing you on that. Yeah, I think so. Yes. Plan and prepare for development in the city and region while maintaining the special character and diversity of Tacoma Park. You are currently considering recommendations from the Housing and Economic Development Strategic Plan. We're continuing to coordinate with business associations, primarily the OTBA, and the Tacoma Langley CDA to promote their work and educate businesses. Let's see, ongoing advocacy for businesses likely to be impacted by the Purple Line. I don't know the details, but there's an email today that said there's a $2 million grant, I think, that's going to be used to help out businesses who could be impacted by the did I say that wrong?
No, it's not all for us, but we're
No, it's
intending
not
on
for
making sure that
us.
we
I didn't mean
benefit from
to-
it.
Did not mean
Yeah, no,
to
it came out
insinuate that it
like
would
2
be
weeks
for
ago
us.
that this was some extra funds, yeah.
And let's see. Sorry to digress. Recently established a working group with representatives of Montgomery County and Prince George's County Chambers of Commerce to begin speaking more seriously about bi-county efforts on the New Hampshire corridor. We've had our inaugural meeting and we need to regroup and figure out what the next steps are to keep that discussion going. I thought it was a pretty good meeting. We have hired our new it says economic development manager. Technically, it's the community development manager for economic development. She started 2 weeks ago now, I think. She's working with other HCD staff and the manager's office to develop a strategy for how we really get this off the ground, our efforts off the ground. And then there, as I mentioned before, there's a land swap for the recreation center that is in the works. And that's all I had. Did you have anything to add, Ms. Loblow?
If I might, just a couple things. So this was the overview. Partly, we're trying to save time for tomorrow night by going through this and refreshing people's minds about those many activities that are underway that are guided by your policies and the work that you had identified before as priorities for the city. I also want to, as we go forward, just give a little bit of information on, I don't know, if you go back a slide, actually, there's some huge projects going to be happening that will take a lot of staff time in FY20, and even some that may not directly take staff time but be awkward with construction happening in this building or with the library. It will also affect us trying to do our other work. We also, the work that will be done on Flower Avenue will be remarkably big. And so, just wanted to kind of put that into perspective. I also want to note for a minute that, we're going into, every year, certain costs increase. And I wanted to mention a little bit about personnel costs for next year. We have not yet received our compensation study. However, the estimate right now, our regular full-time staff salaries alone, not counting benefits, is about $10.5 million a year. That's just for our full-time staff. Another $816,000 is for part-time staff. And we're anticipating just very minimal increases consistent with our policies for fair compensation so we don't get behind. Would total, again, just on hourly pay, salary pay, about $340,000. With, if you look at health insurance increases, if we're fortunate, we'll keep it to about a $77,000 increase. That's still not counting all the other kinds of fringe benefits and things that come with that. Part of the reason for this is that we are committed to paying staff something that's a fair wage for this region, and it's a high-paying region. We have a commitment to not having a full-time staff person earning less than $40,000. That was set several years ago, so it probably needs to bump up a little bit to maybe like $41,000, but that does cause some compression, and you don't like to hire somebody in at a rate that's the same as somebody who's been here for 2 years, and without kind of thinking about how that affects. One of the major impacts for our part-time staff is the change in the minimum wage for the county. Every year it goes up. It's part of the plan. It's part of the law. This year it's $12.25 an hour. It goes up to $13 an hour at the minimum wage. Then it'll go up another 75 cents, then $1, then $1. So we've got those increases. Those tend to go towards our part-time rec staff. If you're kind of really just learning, there's a little bit less that you can pay for like a high school student kind of in a training program. So there's sometimes a few that make a little less than that. But we also have intern programs that pay more than that. And, you know, we have to look and see how the interns work, especially if you've got a college degree or a grad student, that kind of thing. So I just want to put out there that, you know, keeping everything equal still means more money in terms of our programming and staff resources. We are always incredibly tight with funds, but we have been committed to paying our staff a certain wage and to paying full health care for the individual. And so we do have wonderful benefits in that regard. It's part of the commitment, even with a race equity commitment that we have for our staff. So I just want to, as we're thinking of how do we approach the next year, you know, we're not jumping in with lots of new staff proposals and those kinds of things. We're really working very hard, but I do want to just put the costs in perspective as we move forward tomorrow. So it's never fun to say this, but it is just some basic information as we think about what should be the proposals for the coming year, and it gives the deputy city manager a real experience in taking the lead on preparing a draft budget, obviously under my guidance. But.
Can you remind us how many FTEs we have?
It's about 175. Yeah, I mean that.
A little less than that.
There's about 220 people because of the part-timers. You know, so an FTE is a full-time equivalent. It's not necessarily a full-time employee.
And will you be putting this online so that we can?
This presentation?
Yeah.
Sure.
Thank you.
Great. So I think, again, since we're meeting tomorrow night, I want to be conscious of time and not go too late this evening, so that we're fresh for tomorrow. And we have one more agenda item, though. I do want to take some time, maybe if we could go back to the beginning of the presentation on our agenda item on tomorrow, and then on Tuesday night, we'll have the opportunity to really, you know, spend some time going through these, looking at them through a racial equity lens, and then on Tuesday night, we'll prioritize the priorities moving forward. I do want to just say one thing before opening it up maybe for 15 or 20 minutes to talk about, is to piggyback on what the city manager said. I think over the last couple of years, particularly with the current federal government, we have the need for us to allow ourselves to be flexible and have staff time to be able to react to situations such as the current shutdown. And last year, when the tax system got changed, we had cell towers this year, took up an enormous amount of our time this fall that we had not anticipated when we were sitting here last January. I mean, we knew it was coming and we were looking at and preparing for it, but I don't think we had anticipated the level of work. I don't know what's coming in 2019. And so I would just say, as we look at these priorities and think about the capacity for our staff and for ourselves to really work well on the things that we've put in front of us, to consider that there are going to be issues that are going to come up that we are going to need to react to.
So you're
and whatnot.
suggesting that we need to maybe deprioritize some of our priorities?
I just want us to think about some of these things as we're moving forward, because honestly, I don't think any of us sitting here last year thought we would be trying to think of ways of helping our residents who are impacted by the federal shutdown that has gone for over a month, and that what that impact is going to have on our local businesses and other things, because we're going to feel this even if it ended this week, which it's not, for months to come. And so that's all.
So the answer is yes.
Yes.
Yeah, and I think that actually that just reminds me. I mean, there was Councilmember Smith just stepped out, but the county is going through its fiscal hits and identifying its ways that it's going to need to make some cuts. And I forgot the actual amount that they get hit every day just with the federal government shutdown, but it is a surprise.
It's like $1.5 million a
Every
day.
day?
That's
Wow.
what I read.
Yeah. So
But those that have are doing quite well, I understand. Right?
Good. All right. So why don't we spend the next little while and again, we're going to have 2 retreat meetings that are going to dig in deep on this. I think tonight is an opportunity to maybe ask some questions of the city staff or raise some issues that folks want us to consider over the next 2 nights. So if we start maybe with a livable community, we've already walked through this. I will say that for myself, and I'm not advocating we can do that over the next 2 nights, but I do just want to say that there have been residents who have asked for us to look at and discuss whether or not it would be a priority to work on a light ordinance moving forward. So that would just be something that has been requested that we consider during our retreats.
What does that mean?
Well, it comes out of over the last couple of years, we don't have currently in our own city code good regulations regarding lights on like commercial buildings and the impact on residential communities, given the conversations we've had about LEDs, there may be other things regarding shielding and things like that. So
Can I just mention one thing on that? That could also fit within the item that appears a little bit later in the priority list having to do with the residential commercial interaction at the border. I can't remember exactly how we phrased it, but that appears in, I think, in responsive government section. So, I mean, I agree, it could be something we want to look at, but it falls within that general broader category, I think, too.
Cool. Just wanted to put that out there because I've been asked by residents, I know a number of us have been, to put that out there for the council's consideration on that. So I think the only other thing I would like to raise, and again, we don't have to get into deep here, but just raise these things so people can think about it, is when we're talking about our stable housing options, to particularly call out maybe working on folks who live in condos and condominiums. We've had that conversation and then thinking about whether or not we should add that.
Yes, I'll have an outline of some of the implementation steps that are likely to be recommended out of the discussions we've had so far in the Housing Strategic Plan and the Economic Development Strategic Plan. That will give some, put some, I guess, at least some placeholder names and amounts or a sense of magnitude to them.
Cool. Great. Any other? Councilwoman Costa?
Yeah, am I understanding correctly that we're going through each?
Yeah,
kind of
we're going to
general-
kind of go through
yes.
each. And I think, again, we don't need to spend a lot of time, but I just thought tonight could be a night where if people want to put things on the table so that we could just start thinking about them.
This is just a minor thing, but I was thinking, looking at the first goal here regarding the programming, it would just be nice to hear some more report backs based on what the Recreation Department is doing. I feel like we hear from a lot of the other departments, but I have less of a general sense of what's going on. And I think there's a lot of great stuff going on there. I just don't feel like we hear that much. So if we could just get some more information, I think that'd be helpful.
Yeah, along those lines, my sense is that 2 of these require a lot of attention, and 2 of them, one of which is the programming needs, might just be cooking along without a lot of attention, and maybe it's a matter just of hearing back what the programming focus, the changes that have been in the last couple of years. So I'm looking at housing and equity issues, which would include programming, specific programming for targeted communities. I'm looking at those 2 as the guts of this one in the coming year.
All right. Anything else on a livable community for all?
Just wanted to mention, I think under the goal, the list of the various categories of residents, I think, is comprehensive. I think we could certainly, and I don't have the answers, but we could do more on people with developmental disabilities. And the other thing I've heard is there's, a certain amount of childcare activity that we provide, and there's been waiting lists and things of that nature. And I know it's a budgetary item, so maybe we can't do it, but I'd like to at least understand.
Well, that's back to hear from the rec department.
Right, exactly, yeah, just what it would take to do that, and maybe that cost-wise, we can't take it on this year, but I think it's, I've heard from enough residents about it that I think it's worth at least understanding.
Mm-hmm.
And maybe,
All right.
Can I just real quickly?
Yeah.
I don't know if this was mentioned while I had to step out, but maybe we need to consider what happens if the shutdown, the furloughed employees, if this goes on beyond 60 days, 6 months, what we have to do.
Yeah.
Because I think we're getting into uncharted territory, and I don't see any type of resolution that's going to happen soon.
You missed my pitch on keeping our priorities focused because we don't know what the next few months are going to take for us. So yeah, I completely 100% agree. So. Great. Fiscally sustainable government. All right. Environmentally sustainable community. Councilwoman DeBala.
Yeah, I think I'm going to propose that we basically take what we heard today in some form, and I can work on some words to that, for that, and put it in, substitute it for much of what's in the first of these two. Just to focus it even more.
To be reflective of.
To be reflective of the conversation that we had. I'm in agreement with the mayor, what I think the mayor said about focusing even more on the things that we really want to concentrate on so we get them done.
Cool. Well, thank you for taking that on. All right. Engaged, responsive, service-oriented government. Anything here?
yeah, I have a couple of
Yeah.
things I wanted to ask about. So one thing I didn't think we saw on here, and I know we have it in the works, and I'm not saying it has to be done this year, but we have the parking management study, and maybe it's in here and I missed it. But, you know, it's out there as a thing for us to do at some point. I'm not sure I would rank it above some of the other things, but I'd like to at least see where it fits in, let's put it that way. We've spent time on it. It fell by the wayside for legitimate reasons. And then just a couple of other things in number 4, in engaged, responsive, service-oriented government. So, of course, we've talked a ton about the utilities, and I think it's already on there. I really hope we can take some action on that soon. The other couple of issues are, with respect to community policing, there were a few questions, and it's my sense that the police chief is interested, but I think we'd have to be involved eventually too. The state law has passed, and there's the ability, and I think you know about this, there's both mediation, but also the ability to involve civilians in the board review. That's something I think fits into community policing, so we might want to do it. And then the other one is, I don't just think we might want to do it, I think we do want to do it. And then the other one is, the responsiveness question, I think the staff does an excellent job. I think one area I hear sometimes is because there's not a lot of staff, when people call, it's hard to get called back right away. And I think we can emphasize that a little bit more. Even if the answer is just, hey, I got your message, I don't have the answer, we'll be looking into it. I don't know exactly how to measure that or how to include that or what that would be. And I don't want to create extra work, but I think people ought to be able to get responses back in reasonable amounts of time. And I don't know what that would look like, but.
Well, it's a basic policy, so if I don't hear from people about who it is that's not returning calls, then I don't know how to focus that.
Okay.
But I'm absolutely committed to seeing that happen.
Thank you.
Great. Councilwoman Costick?
Yeah, so Mr. Damweber alluded to this a little bit in the discussion about the traffic calming policies and sidewalk request policies, which were two goals that we had last year, and I still think are extremely important for us to get back to. our goals there were to amend those policies to make them more racially equitable and to broaden them out so that people, not just in single-family homes, but in multifamily buildings, could take advantage of those opportunities more. Councilmember Smith and I have been working on a proposal and shared a brief write-up with all of you on the council regarding a Vision Zero initiative. And I would like to propose, and Councilmember Smith and I would like to propose, that we shift this existing priority away from just focusing on the traffic calming and sidewalk requests, but broaden it out slightly and focus it on an initiative that would aim to build something similar to what the county and the state have done, and develop a Vision Zero policy that would aim to eliminate traffic fatalities and serious injuries within 7 to 10 years is the general goal that a lot of these policies set. And the advantage of this, compared to sort of just doing it piecemeal, is that it takes a more holistic and systems-based approach, really prioritizing human safety on the roads. And I think in some ways it could, addressing some of the points that have been made earlier regarding staff time and cost, I think there would be an initial output of those things, but I think long term it actually could enable us to be a little more streamlined in what we do, because our work on traffic issues would be a little more coordinated and focused. So one of the advantages of doing this, and I can speak a little more tomorrow about some of these things, but I think it would allow us to prioritize where we do safety and transportation work in terms of infrastructure improvements, traffic calming, sidewalk requests, outreach, and education efforts, to really focus them on areas that are in need of safety improvements, not necessarily just responding to requests for traffic calming or for new sidewalks, but being able to identify where are the top areas we need these things most, and then address those things in a really prioritized way. So I'm happy to discuss that further, and tomorrow night we can maybe discuss that more, but that's one thing I'd like to see.
Councilmember Smith?
And I'd just like to add that this is a national initiative. A number of jurisdictions around the country are putting a focus on Vision Zero. Let me just say that here in the state of Maryland, I just recently found this out. Carl Schneider, who is the chief of police of La Plata and my vice chair for the CPC, says that the trends in Maryland have gone up when it comes to vehicle fatalities. And that is exactly the opposite what has been happening in the rest of the country. So this is a huge issue. I think Tacoma Park could play a leadership role in it. I think the first phase would not really require a lot of actual budget implications, but more staff time that we could bring all the different departments together and look at ways that we can improve traffic safety, police response to incidents, and even educating residents on best ways to operate their vehicles, or using sidewalks, requiring sidewalks in different areas. But initially, I don't see this requiring any type of changes in our FY20 budget. And I want to thank Councilmember Kostick for working with me on this.
Great. Do people have some questions on this, and then we'll move Councilmember Kovar?
This is quick. I don't know enough about what the proposal is to be able to assess, whether in this form it makes sense or not. I'd like to learn more about it. The one thing I think that is missing from the work we do here and could fit within this is I had previously identified, just in the area that I cover in Ward 1, a group of dangerous intersections that were in some cases not marked as well as they could be, or otherwise dangerous. And if we were going to go forward with something like this, I'd like that to be part of what we look at, because I don't know what it's like elsewhere in the city necessarily, but if we have some of them are relatively easy to address just by putting down the stripe where the cars should stop, or a different signage. Others could be more complicated, but I think that would, if we go forward with something like this, I'd like to see that type of thing be part of it. So,
And
thanks.
if I could just add, pedestrian safety is part of Vision Zero. So that would
Actually,
be-
that was actually, I had a question. My understanding of Vision Zero was focused on pedestrian safety, but Councilmember Smith, when you talked about vehicular accidents, so was I confused, was it both?
No, I think, yeah,
It's all of
it's
it?
everything, but I
It's all
think
of
the major focus is on pedestrian and bike safety, with vehicular safety being sort of an afterthought almost, to sort of turn things on its head a little bit. Because what we think about most often is, how does a car use an intersection? How does a car drive down a road? And so this takes it away from being car-centric and really focuses it on human safety. So it is human safety within cars, but it's primarily and largely human safety as a mode of walking and biking. And Councilmember Smith shared a really useful document as we were talking about this that framed Vision Zero and this perspective on it as walking and biking and safety as actually a civil right, so that these things were not something that you had to take your life into your own hands when you were walking somewhere, or you didn't feel that it was something that was secondary to driving somewhere. So I think it could encompass all of those things, but it really prioritizes the walking and biking.
If I might, I think one of the things that I feel very good about the history of the city of Tacoma Park is that we've put this into as a priority for a long time. It's why we do sidewalk construction. It's why we have paid for safe routes to schools year after year after year. As the state cut back on its funding, we still see the value in that. Very fortunately, we've not had a lot of pedestrian fatalities. I think there's a lot of things that we have as components that we're looking at. It's why we're doing the Flower Avenue Green Street, because there's one whole sidewalk you can't walk on. It's hard to get to the bus stops. So I
Finish
think there's
Ethan
a
Allen.
lot. I'm sorry?
Ethan Allen Gateway.
We've gotten the Ethan Allen Gateway done, thank God. So we've been going through these things. We still have the whole process of trying to deal with sidewalks on state highways that haven't started yet. So there are a variety of those things. Councilwoman Kostick met the other night with the Safe Roadways group and trying to think of its charter, and I would love to see leadership from a community organization, a city committee to look at some of these kinds of things. To say it's just staff means money, because I would have to hire staff. It may be a temporary thing, but in terms of anything that requires a lot of effort, the public works staff is going to be completely consumed with the major projects that are advancing many of these things in the coming year. It may be that there's a way to think of phasing some of this in, or to forming it so we've got an annual plan going forward that I'm very interested in seeing. But I am concerned about taking on a major project.
And I would just add that we envisioned that Safe Roadways Committee would be the lead on this. And
Well, you guys have to figure that out, yeah.
well, I mean, with Casey, that's when we met. That's what we. That's what.
Councilwoman
I mean, that is a council discussion too, obviously, for the
Right.
council. Okay, I didn't realize you were referring to that.
Yeah.
Okay.
So when I said staff, we want as the Safe Roadways Committee to get information from the staff. Doesn't mean that the staff has to go to a meeting, but we wanted to make sure that whether it was calls for service, whether it was road design from HCD, or not HCD, but Public Works, all that information could be provided if it was asked for by
Right.
the Safe Roads.
I won't talk anymore, but
That's
just
all
this one thing. It's doing the research and gathering the data that I think is what the point is here, is to get that so that it's data driven, but gathering that is where the time is. I'm happy to have staff go to the meetings. It's the prep work and the gathering and thinking through that's the more time consuming thing. But again, we need to talk it out, and I'm looking forward to the discussion tomorrow. I'm still waiting to get a little bit of information from staff after seeing this yesterday. So thanks very much.
Councilwoman Searcy?
So I think the premise is a good one. I think the vision and having an initiative, thumbs up. In Ward 6, actually where we border with Prince George's County, University Boulevard and New Hampshire Avenue is actually one of the deadliest areas in the state of Maryland for pedestrians, period. So when we're talking about, oh, we don't have that many in Tacoma Park, yeah, we do, if you're talking about the area that is in the crossroads. We're talking to MTA right now to try to make sure that during Purple Line construction, instead of taking down all those barriers and put cones up in the interim, that we actually put something up that's going to stop people from trying to cross the road, because that is why the barriers are put up, because people are getting hit. So I agree with the goal. I agree with what we're, the vision, for lack of better words. But I do think that it's important for us to, because we have a tendency to generate a lot of initiatives and reports that require a lot of time to develop and study things that we already know. And if what we want is to try to make sure that some of the principles behind, Vision Zero are embedded in the work that we're doing right now, then I would be all for it. But not necessarily developing another strategy, another policy that's supposed to happen in 10 years when we have the Purple Line construction going on right now. And we need to make sure that we're having conversations with the SHA, having conversations with the MTA, and really trying to make the necessary moves to improve New Hampshire Avenue, which is where I had a constituent die trying to cross New Hampshire Avenue on his way to church. What can we do to try to really make some inroads with State Highway to make the necessary improvements that we need on some of these state roads? So if that would be one of the primary priorities for this initiative, I'm for it. But I do think that that's something important that we need to keep in mind, especially as we're talking about other priorities that are noted in the document.
Thank you. Councilmember Dabala and Siemens, and then I want to actually wrap up this conversation because this was not, I don't want this to now turn into a late conversation, so.
Yeah, I was.
Are you talking about the Vision Zero stuff, or are you gonna move on?
I was gonna move on.
Okay, well, then let me just make sure, Councilmember Siemens, did you want to talk about the Vision Zero?
I think it's a great idea, yes. I think it's a great idea. I appreciate the city manager's concern about the time, and I think that's one of the things that would help on all of these initiatives is to have a feel for the amount of time involved, because I think that would be a big step towards the concern that you expressed in the beginning, that we could look at which of these things maybe are real nice to do, but are too time consuming for the resources that we want to put into them.
Yeah. Great, and I'll just close out this conversation and we can pick it up again tomorrow evening. And I want to make sure I understood Councilmember Acosta and Smith, because I see this as a goal, not one of the strategies. So I don't actually see this replacing consider existing traffic calming policies and process, develop and implement recommendations and improve. This seems much bigger than that. So I think if we are gonna think about adding this to our list of priorities, it actually goes under the goal category.
Oh
Is
yeah,
that okay?
absolutely.
Okay,
Yes.
good. All
No.
right, I just wanted to make sure,
And I well, I mean, it is sort of an initiative. We proposed some language on the we proposed some possible language on the second page
Oh, I'm
here
sorry.
that does list a
again.
goal of
Yes.
developing an initiative. Yes, but
saw that
that
and
would
then missed it,
encompass what is currently the goal of developing the policies.
Got it, sorry.
Yes.
All right, thank you. We will pick up more on this. Thank you for preparing that and bringing that to us. Engaged and responsive service-oriented government. I just wanted to put out there, before we move on, a focus on multifamily units. I know we've had in the past a real focus on like social media and websites and things like this, and I think Councilmember Siemens and I have, again, when we do the coffees and things at the apartment buildings, really thinking about how we reach out and get information to them. So.
You stole my thunder.
Oh, I'm sorry.
I was
Just say ditto, and then we'll move
I
on.
was going to say that I think that the progress on the outreach generally and the move into online and the social media, and that's great, and that's part one, and part two is more of the kind of thing that doing the 4 different languages represents, and targeting and we'll talk about this during the procedures too, how do we engage all different parts of the community? That's, I think, the next part of this that is maybe the topic for this here. And on the first one, just like we were saying, let's ask the rec department, maybe we should, is the police chief gonna come in at some point in the near future and talk about some of these, how he sees the strategy on the goal for the first one? Maybe that would be informative.
Yeah, I mean, he's on for the annual report
Yeah.
in March, but if there's something
Oh,
before
okay,
then
well
it's
then,
needed.
yeah,
then-
so the answer is he's gonna be here in March, got it.
Yeah. And he's working on what Councilmember Kovar raised before.
Yeah.
And can, fill us in on that, but
Right.
he's been working on that.
Okay.
So, great. Actually, what Councilwoman DeBala just reminded me of, tomorrow, WC Manager, can you recirculate the focus group report that we did receive? Because I do think there were some questions that were asked, and we don't have to like delve into it, but I think that provided us with some insight into how to reach out to different communities. In that, I just remembered that.
And,
So.
and in the spirit of focusing, so the goal about council-appointed committees, not to diss the committees, because the committees we have are great. If we could get the Safe Roadways Committee back up and running, and maybe that would be a good year's objective for this, rather than try to continue some big overview, reorganization, survey. I'm just saying, maybe that's a place we could
Yeah.
call it good for now.
There are some things we need to fix, though. Committees' assignments are all over the place. Yeah, there's just some things that drive the city clerk crazy, and she's not going to be too nice to say it.
Oh, okay, all right, well, if it's for Jesse, then.
If it's for Jesse, we'll do it. All right, moving on to community development for an improved and equitable quality of life. On this one, I just want to move forward that, given where we are now with the land swap moving forward on the New Hampshire Avenue Rec Center, and some of the work that Councilwoman Searcy has done on this, I'd like us to contemplate during our retreats, moving the redevelopment of the rec center from major projects and initiatives above that line into a goal, so that it's more front and center for us.
Can I just say one other thing?
Yeah.
We had earlier had developed, and I think it was helpful at the time, but I think maybe pushing it a little bit more front and center is the master calendar idea that shows when all the different things are happening. I really like that. I'm not sure everybody else cares about it, but when all these projects are happening kind of at the same time or in overlapping ways, it's hard to really grasp it even on the chart, but if we can find a way to have that and post it so that people can see that this one's ending then and this one might start then, but maybe we'll have to wait if that one takes longer. It's just useful information that we don't always see how they mesh or don't mesh with each other.
And that's one thing I do want to just draw everyone's attention to. I think it's probably the next slide, but we have a lot of things that will likely hit the fan this year. So, I mean, between, what may ultimately, advance with the junction, like it is possible that we could be maybe in the ground testing more stuff by the end of this year. So, between that and the possibility of the land swap happening this year and the possibility of a number of other things transpiring over the course of the year, I think this particular priority, and we could talk more about it tomorrow, might need to be a place where we, as a council, keep in mind that this is going to be a priority amongst the priorities. I mean, because you're talking about the Adventist Hospital moving this year. There's a lot of stuff that from a timeline perspective, under this objective, is just gonna kind of move.
I agree, and I think it is it's a little stunning to know how this is all coming together. The biggest challenge is that I couldn't tell you on any one of these things what the timeline is. I can do it maybe in 4-month segments or 6-month segments, but it's, as we've found just in the past few couple months, some things pop up that you
Yeah.
don't expect, and other things take longer. And so, but I think FY20 is going to be busy for that.
Mhm. Yep. Cool.
So you don't want to add the purple line in here?
Yeah.
It's there.
It's there.
I don't think we have a choice.
Yeah. All right. So we're gonna leave this. First, thank you to the deputy city manager for. I think this was a good prep for tomorrow evening. So get ready for tomorrow. And the deputy city manager can circulate this PowerPoint if people want to look at it again before tomorrow evening. But it's gonna be interesting. The final thing we have this evening is reviewing our council procedures. We do this pretty much, well, since I've been mayor, I think every January, we review this. Our goal here is to make sure that how we basically run our formal meetings is clear to the public so that we have good engagement, people know what to expect, and also, and you'll notice I spent some time really thinking about the racial equity considerations on the cover sheet, working with the city clerk on this, because I also do think it is important that we put in place clear procedures that give people opportunities to engage with the city council. As well as take into consideration if there are any special needs of different groups that we need to address. So there have been some changes given feedback. One of the things that we changed was particularly adding a section regarding the goal of when we're going to have agenda packets and information available to the public. And I think there was two other places where there was extraneous language from earlier drafts of this that just got carried over the years. It used to be that the city council held voting meetings at where they just voted, and then other meetings where they were like the second Monday of the month or whatever. Anyway, it just alternated. It was confusing. I found it confusing when I first came on the city council, and I thought, well, if I'm a city council member and I find this confusing, I can't imagine members of the public can keep track of when we're voting versus when we're having work sessions. So now we don't do that anymore. So we're gonna vote on a resolution adopting these procedures next Wednesday. And this information also lives on the city website, so people can easily access it as well. Any questions, comments, changes? Yes, Councilmember Kovar.
Just two quick things, and I appreciate it. I think overall it's good and the process works well. On the new item number 3, I'm glad you've added that in there. You know, I was thinking about, well, if it's not posted by a certain time on a certain day, we should just pull it. But it occurred to me that that doesn't work because there are so many reasons why that could happen, or reasons why we have to do something even
Right.
if the information comes in late. So I think it's better to do it this way, and I'm glad you did, and I just hope, you know, you will exercise your judgment well, as I'm sure you will. The only other point I wanted to mention was on item 10, which is page 4. It's a lot of work to schedule a meeting not here in the chamber, and so we do it a couple of times a year. I'm just sort of super conscious of trying to find other ways to reach beyond the regular way we do it. I'm not saying we don't do those things plenty, and I don't have any magical answers to what the other things would be, but I think it would be good just to keep thinking about other ways to do that. That's all.
100% agree.
And I'm not saying we don't, or I'm not disappointed with what we've done. It's just, you know, finding ways to engage with more parts of the community is just.
Yeah.
is
I will
something we
say,
need to
just
do.
so for people who are listening to the meeting, you know, this is one of the things that we've tried very hard over the years to do, and there are certain limitations we have in terms of size, where our city TV can set up to make sure the meetings are broadcast, and also ADA compliant places. So you'd be amazed how many places we think of and we're like, nope, can't do it there. So always open to suggestions of places to do it. But I completely agree. I think particularly the times that we're able to do them at the rec center on New Hampshire Avenue have been very good meetings. So, any other? Yeah, Councilwoman Zabala.
Yeah, I was gonna talk about 3 and 10 also. 3, the new 3, agenda packets. So for me, the issue is not whether it goes up on Tuesday or Wednesday, the week before a meeting, the bulk of the material, but the last minute changes. And so could we have all the material goes up, whatever Jesse thinks, the Wednesday or Thursday before the meeting, or the Tuesday before the meeting, but any changed material goes up the Tuesday of that week, not the Wednesday afternoon. So sometimes material's gone up as late as Wednesday afternoon for 7:30 that night.
Right.
And so can we have
So I
a
would
target for
so-
that?
Yes, and I would say because many people do watch our meetings and don't come here to the auditorium to pick up hard copies, for example, on cell towers. Changes were being made that we wanted to discuss that evening, and that was actually something we discussed about whether or not to put it up on the website. And since there was such a large interest from members of the public about following along with the changes we made the decision to post
Right.
the most recent document right before the meeting on Wednesday afternoon.
And that was a revision of a document that
That had
already
been posted the week
which
before.
makes some sense.
Right.
But sometimes presentations and other completely new things show up.
Yes, so for example,
And-
the agenda packets are usually reflective of the content of what we will be covering. However, like this evening, the excellent presentation we had from the Deputy City Manager was not completed in time for the Tuesday before of last week to be posted. And so that information he may have posted earlier today or will be posted after today. So I think, again, I would just say for people who are watching, if they want to follow along, it may be easier for them to pull the presentations that staff are showing us, if that makes sense.
Maybe I'm not making myself clear.
Okay, sorry.
So the bulk of the material goes up by a certain date, and that already is practice, and that's great. And then sometimes there's a revision to an ordinance based on changes we've been working on during the week. Fine.
Okay.
If there are presentations that people want to follow along with, it would, and if council wants to read them ahead of time, it would be good to have them available 24 hours before the meeting.
Okay.
Not after the meeting
Right.
or 2 hours before the meeting. Doesn't always work. Everybody's got a lot to do. But I'm wondering if we could agree on a target for that stuff.
Got it.
So we certainly can do it from a staff perspective. What we often have is when we have somebody else doing the presentation, and we try to urge them to get it to us by X time, but that's tough.
Well, sure.
I think that I think that's up to you. If the difficulty is sometimes we may not have all the right information.
Right.
So it's just one of those things that we can do it as staff. It's how we deal with it with other kinds of presentations. Makes a difference.
Yeah.
I think that, to me, and I don't know if others would agree with me, the biggest challenge is when, for legitimate reasons or just the usual kinds of things that happen, it comes late, and it's something that we're being asked to actually either vote on or at least give hand indications on. I think in those cases, it's arguably more problematic because
Sure.
residents want to be able to weigh in and tell us what they think. When it's a presentation, of course, it's great to have it, but we're not, honestly, to me, if the Crossroads thing had been later, I don't think a major thing would have been lost. The challenge comes, sometimes there's a deadline we have to meet for a certain thing. The cell phone one might be a good example. And so even if it came in late, for reasons that we all know, we kind of felt like, we did feel like we had to do it by a certain date. And so I'm personally reluctant to specify that we must have things posted by a certain time because it might end up hurting us in a case like that, even though I agree we should strive for it. Let's put it that way.
Yeah, and I guess I think the goal of this is to be really clear to people and to be able to follow it. And I'd rather have something, I'm worried about putting something that then we aren't able to follow and is confusing for people.
So one of the things that I guess I would like to raise is the different kinds of presentations. And I know that sometimes, I don't know if this sounds right, but I'd like to surprise you with the presentation. So as opposed to having you like read it in advance. And for example, for my presentation about the budget, you will receive the budget document with the transmittal letter, but you know, how I present it, I don't necessarily want you to read it beforehand. I might just kind of like to be able to present it. Now, maybe
Build the anticipation.
so it's exciting, right? Now, that may not be a good enough reason, and that's fine, that could be it. But I absolutely appreciate if there's something that requires you to have thought about it so that you react to and have a hand vote or some other kind of thing. I think that's a very valid criticism. I don't want to put you in that situation. So I appreciate that. If that gets written or if it's just the understanding, I mean, that's kind of how I take it.
And before you move on, does anyone want to else comment? I have some lights on. Comment on that piece?
I have a
or-
comment on something separate.
Okay, you have a comment on that one, or?
Yes,
something
I just say that this has been an issue that, you know, has come up many times through the years. And again, it gets to the point is, like you said, you've summarized it very well, and I think you've done a good job since you've been city manager. But I think it's nice if we can codify it and actually say what it is that we want. And basically, it's that if we have a decision to make, that we have more than a couple hours' notice, right?
So, so also on number 10, not to codify it and repeating somewhat what I said during the priorities discussion, I think it's time to start thinking really hard about other ways to reach out to people besides come to public comment or send a formal email to Jesse. Think about other ways to get, particularly people who don't do online surveys because they don't have computers or they don't work that way. It's just thinking about other ways to do that. It doesn't have to be codified in here, but I don't want to lose that thought. And similarly on, where is it? Number 7B, the 5 minutes. I'm fine that the mayor has discretion to allow someone to go from 3 minutes to 5 minutes. I would hope that wouldn't happen too often and that there'd be some real obvious reason for it, rather than it be, that's the person who knew to ask for extra
No,
time.
and I think Councilwoman Costick has raised this as well.
Okay.
So when I first became mayor, there were a number of residents who were very upset if they could not go over the 3 minutes. And so we, you know, put in place this policy. Some people like to bring PowerPoints or other things. This opportunity to extend their time and to request it 24 hours in advance, and to ask whether or not they truly need the extra 5 minutes and materials. I will say that there are certain people who do avail themselves of that opportunity more so than others. It is not that frequent. I will say that for those residents who do, I think I have received good feedback that they do not feel frustrated any longer by being constrained by the 3 minutes. So I think that's positive. And I think it is on the city website, and as much as possible, we, you know, do let people know about that. I agree. I think, you know, if we could all practice and get our comments in 3 minutes. But I also understand there are some people who believe we shouldn't even have time limits at all. So I do think, given that that we've had this practice in place for a couple of years now, and I'd love to hear other feedback if other people are receiving different feedback. I have received positive feedback about this change and the process we have in place.
Again, as my historical perspective, when I first joined the council, there were no time limits on public comments. And I can't say that sessions ran any longer than some we've had here in this last year. So. But as you said, there are varying opinions on it. I think the key thing is we want to make sure that people are heard and that they understand that there are alternative ways of getting us the message that they want to impart. And I think it's worked fairly well since you've been mayor.
Cool. All right, Councilwoman Costick.
So I just have a couple of questions. And number 2, I noticed that it says the meeting agendas are posted on the community center bulletin board. And I have to admit, I don't know where the bulletin board is or what it is.
It's across from the teen lounge.
Okay.
Oh, that's not?
No. So there you go.
That's a different one.
It's the one upstairs.
The one right out.
Right out here? Okay.
Oh, right out
okay.
here.
Oh.
Right out, yeah.
I was gonna say it's the one. Oh my gosh, that would have been so funny. We should all have guessed. What is? Oh,
Yeah,
well,
so there
yeah.
is, it is right out, it is right out here. But no, that's a good point, that isn't a clear statement.
No, and I've just in the last couple of weeks actually met several residents who don't have computers and use the internet, and it's just something I think when you do, you don't think about that at all. So maybe just to make that, maybe we could make that clearer or try to remind people of it more frequently. I think that would be useful. The other very minor thing, I noticed the numbering is there's 2 3s. The other question I had was, and this is purely just for my own understanding. So in number 6, if you're looking at the additional agenda items, B, so if we, for example, this happened a few meetings ago, I wanted to request that an item was taken from the consent agenda and made a separate item. Is that the time when we do that, or do we do that at a different time? How does that work?
Yeah, that's.
I was just looking at number 6 and just the order of the meetings, and
Yes.
if one of us wanted to add an agenda item or one of us wanted to pull something from a consent agenda, at what point in the meeting is it appropriate for us to do that?
So normally, I ask that folks let us know ahead of time if they want to pull something from a consent agenda item, and the reason just to help give staff a heads up if there are questions or things like that, or lots of times if something is in a consent agenda, the appropriate staff may not actually be coming to the meeting because there's no discussion, and so I ask that if you want to put something from the consent agenda that we're provided notice ahead of time so that we can make sure the appropriate staff is here or the questions, and also that we can let everybody else on council know this is going to get pulled from it. If something else comes up and we want to add it to the agenda, yes, that would be the appropriate time. Or if something had to get pulled at the last minute, that's when we would announce it.
Yeah, there's also procedures in here about how to
do that.
request to add an agenda item, but that's not for the same night.
Yeah, when I wasn't clear whether for that one too, that would still be the appropriate time. I think that actually said it was during the council comments that you were to request.
That's
if
for
I'm
another
remembering.
meeting?
Yeah, for another meeting, exactly.
Right.
Okay. Yeah, and I mean, it worked fine when I think I told you ahead of time that I wanted to pull it. I just wanted to make sure I understood that correctly.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Cool. All right. Seeing no other. Are you good? Oh, I was gonna say wait. I was like, seeing no other lights. If there is language that people want to consider for adding or changing, please get those in the next couple of days, because we will then be voting on a resolution on Wednesday on this, and then, if necessary, update anything on the website. I think there are a couple of places. So thank you to everybody, and particularly to our city clerk for moving us through that. All right, we are adjourned. See you back here tomorrow night at 6:30.
Love it, love it.